I wonder if you ever read von Kleist's story about the fighting bear. It's a story about a man who has a fight with a circus bear, and the bear reads his mind and always forestalls any attack that he makes on it. There's absolutely nothing he can do to get past the bear. And so, in the same way, you might imagine a guru who is a mind reader, and he always knows if you decide before you act. And if you do, you see, the devil will catch you. The necessity of letting go of the bowstring without first deciding to do so. Another way of putting it is that the decision to release the bowstring and the action of doing so must be simultaneous. Not to decide and then act, but to act, decide all at once. Now, why is this? If you are going to be an expert archer, you must shoot before you think, otherwise it'll be too late. You don't aim and then shoot. It's all one action. And this is true likewise of any sort of shooting, pistol shooting as well. If you aim, if you decide and then fire, you're apt to do things like pulling the trigger instead of squeezing. All kinds of wrong things are done. And you're always a moment too late if you decide first. You have to act and decide simultaneously. So what does that do? You see, that puts up a very curious problem, which in its own turn becomes a bind. To try and act quickly enough so that you overtake the preliminary decision. To try not to decide first. And that is an impossible problem.
You probably heard that shout on samurai films. And you wonder perhaps what that is. That comes from Zen. There was an old Chinese Zen master called Rinzai. And when people asked him, what is the meaning of Buddhism? He'd say, "Ho!" They were profoundly disconcerted. One simply, if you're a philosophical gentleman, you don't answer polite questions like that. But that again is a trap. See if the questioner can be phased and thrown off center. And so in the same way, the samurai in attack uses the same terrifying shout, as it were, to startle his opponent into losing his balance and thinking for a moment. And if he thinks and hesitates, he's lost. He responds to the attack without any interval. This also would be a characteristic of dancing. Good dancing partners look as if they were one single organism. There is no interval between the man's lead and the woman's following. And when you are accustomed to a partner with whom you've worked some time and who is expert in dancing, it almost feels as if she were part of your own body because she moves so completely responsively to your initiative. In just the same way, the leaf on a tree responds to the wind. The wind blows, and the tree, the leaf doesn't stop and think, well, shall I get around to wagging? Immediately the wind comes, the leaf goes with it. And the same way when you watch a ball floating on water, it responds instantly to the slightest modulation of the waves. And this attitude of there being no interval is what is the real meaning of the Buddhist ideal of detachment. It doesn't mean that a man is detached from the world, who has no emotions, who has no appetites. What are attachments are almost in the surgical sense of an attachment or a lesion inside the body, where something sticks together where it shouldn't stick. Stickiness is the best translation of attachment in Buddhism. And so the expert in judo has to be without sticking. He has to flow with life in the same way that the ball responds to the movements of the water. And then he's never caught out. Aside from judo, Zen has had perhaps even more influence on the Japanese art of fencing, called kendo. Ken is the sword, do, the way of the sword. And this surprises many people because they think, how can the Pacific philosophy of Buddhism be connected with anything so ferocious as the art of fighting? But it was. Shortly after Zen Buddhism was introduced into Japan, it became the favorite way of life of the samurai, those feudal Japanese warriors who were, for many centuries there, involved in perpetual civil war between the various feudal lords. And as they lived in constant danger, constant insecurity, they took up Zen as a way of peace in the midst of fighting. But what about the ethics of this? Seems to me quite a simple problem. Either we're going to have fighting and war or we're not. Now, if we've made up our minds that it's necessary to fight, that there must be soldiers, then surely there is no alternative but to do it well. In other words, if you're going to chop somebody's head off, chop it off with complete decision, because a half-hearted chop is very agonizing for the victim.
When they teach you in Japanese Zen how to use a sword, the first thing that the teacher says to the student is, now, if you're going to be a good soldier, you've got to be alert constantly, because you never know where the attack's going to come from. Now, you know what happens to you when you try to be on the alert. You think about being alert, and then you're a hopeless prey to the enemy, because you're not alert. You're thinking about being alert. You must be simply awake and relaxed. And then all your nerve ends are working, and wherever the attack comes from, you're ready. They liken this to a barrel of water. The water is just sitting there in the barrel. But the minute you make a hole in the barrel, the water immediately is ready to come out of that hole. So in the same way, the mind, when it is in the proper state, is ready to respond in any direction from which the attack may come. So this man is no longer alert in the sense of taut and anxious. Which way is he going to go? See? He's sitting there, like a cat sits there. And the minute anything happens, it's right there. Because it didn't have to overcome any set in a direction opposite to that from which the attack comes. If you're set for the attack to come from there, and it comes from here, you have to pull back from there and go there, but that's too late. So you sit in the middle, and you don't expect the attack from any particular direction. So in the same way, all this applies to yoga. You can be watchful, you can be concentrated, you can be alert. But all that will ever teach you is what not to do, how not to use the mind. Because it'll get you into deeper and deeper and deeper binds. You have to let it happen. Just like you have to let yourself go to sleep. You can't try to go to sleep. You have to let yourself digest your food. You can't try to digest it. And so in the same way, you have to let yourself wake up. Become liberated.
Again, as in judo, one must move without stopping. So in fencing, there is to be no interval between attack and defense. Watching good fencers, they seem to dance together and to, as it were, be going through the motions as one body. And then there's just that critical moment when one man loses his guard and he's done for. A Zen poem says, "Under the sword lifted high is hell making you tremble. But go straight ahead, and there is the land of bliss. No stopping, complete response to the moment."